Hello and welcome to our fifth series on the discipline title Between Carrot and Stick. In the previous episode, we spoke about delivering consequences. So we said do not have empty threats to your students, otherwise they'll fall on deaf ears. And we also explained our little character Harry and how he would intensify in his behavior and discipline issues and how the authorities, the education institution, the teachers would respond to it. Because students understand if the rules are implemented after they are implied. So this was our previous episode. Today we're going to take you to the fifth session to a very important rule called the taboo rule. Yes, the word taboo itself means no, stop, prevent something. And here we are giving you a graded level of action what a teacher should and should not do. You see, sometimes we panic at the very faint idea of indiscipline. So how does a teacher mentally make a note of which is to be escalated and which is to be resolved at a particular level? A simple example could be biting. At what level is biting serious to be brought parents into, or at what level is this a school or a classroom episode and that's how it should be dealt with? So to understand this graded level of action, let's go back to our friend Harry. Remember, the protagonist, of course, of our entire series now is Harry, who is a third grader, ideally a 8 or a 9-year-old boy. And of course, gender has nothing to do with discipline, so please do not ever criticize. It could be very much Hermione. But then, here are two specific actions that Harry is doing. Which one? We all understand the intensity and gravity of the problem, but how do you classify them? So one of them is Harry was eating during the classroom. So this boy was so hungry and the period perhaps was so very exhausting that he picked up his sandwich in the science period and started eating. What do you do? Is it an issue to be taken about in the school principal's room, or is it something that you put a note in the diary? Interestingly, when I speak about diary, there was a teacher who used to put every single indiscipline issue in the diary in my school. An excellent teacher, believe me. Someone who I respect a lot. But then what happened is a diary is a mental note of child's progress. And the mother bought it rightly that my child is afraid to even read his own diary because there are too many issues out there. So this is where you put a graded level. A child eating a tiffin during a period, I perhaps do not rate it as high as the second episode, which is where he poked a pointed, sharpened pencil to his immediate neighbor. Now that is an issue. Imagine the seriousness and the grievous injury it causes. So this is where we call the taboo rules helps us a lot. The taboo rule is an acronym rather of these different words we would say where would you escalate the problem to. So the first one of course in taboo is totally unacceptable. The T stands for something that will not accept in our school culture. It could be fist fighting, so I'll not accept any kind of rowdy, a gang culture in my school. Of course, when you take up issues on grade higher level, secondary and higher secondary, drugs, pornography, and believe me, the issue of pornography is not only with the students, it's also with the staff. There have been male staffs of school and female staffs of school discussing or rather showing a pornographic video to the students. You would put your foot down and you would take an action. Now the idea of this is, I know another school, a good school, a school I was consulting some years back, and this school took up such a serious action of 3 students watching pornography in the classroom that they not only had a major issue with the parents, they rusticated, terminated the students. Now that is a problem. Because what you are trying to do is my school culture is intolerant, which is acceptable. So this is totally unacceptable. But dealing with the crisis was not the right way. And the school prided itself in calling itself a faith-based school, a school which gives morally high values. Only thing you did was you expelled somebody who was only opportunity for him was to learn in your school. So that's not acceptable. The rules were not clear. This is what happens when you make a rule and do not have a consequence of how do you improve it. The very idea of people going to prison is for reformation. If schools cannot reform, then I don't know which place would. I think Sir Ken Robinson was very apt then when it says, I feel sorry when I pass by a school and a jail for the people who are inside the premises. And I think we don't want to make a school like a prisons. Yes? So taboo rule says totally unacceptable, but what we say is consequences is something very, very different. Right now we're saying where would we draw the line? So it would be fist fighting, drugs, pornography. It could be a different things, perhaps we can look at graffiti in the toilet. Where would that come in? The next one. It's not absolutely unacceptable because children were, peer pressure, what happened around it, what did they write, the comment, did they write a phone number of a female colleague or a teacher, did they write some type private drawing that happened of genital parts, I'm talking very straightforward. It's called about time. In taboo, so AB stands for about time, that it's time to take an action. So anything like cursing in the classroom, biting somebody, remember we spoke about biting. This is a time when you take a level action, little level graded lesser than the first one, the totally unacceptable one. The same way graffiti for me comes here. Urinating in the classroom comes here. A lot of things we can discuss. These are the rules we form. The next O rather. So the O is as in no. So these are strict no-nos in the classroom. Great schools, what they do is they make a discipline chart or a rule chart and stick it in the classroom. And I'll talk about that in the next slide, where things that you don't want. I don't want you to eat in the classroom. Absolutely no. I don't want to make fun of the teacher in the classroom. No, not allowed. Maybe teacher did something wrong. Again, we'll speak about that. But these are no-nos. And the last one is O. Alright, no is no. O is no. You can't reprimand a child for shouting in the class. Okay, that's one time talk down to them. That's about it. So, or running in the hallway, isn't it? These or fidgeting with your fingers in the assembly. Sometimes we make a big deal about it when that's not supposed to be made a big deal about. So here is a taboo rule, a very, very easy way to break down what is totally unacceptable. About time, so you take action about certain things immediately. That's important. Number 3 is no. So certain rules which should be within the class premise and not acceptable in the class though. When O is alright, sometimes I might even ignore the OO rules. So that's where our Harry can breathe a sigh of relief. School knows what's doing, why it's doing, and what will it do to follow up if someone's being caught or doing the act. Remember we spoke about school social contract a previous session. Now the school social contract is not just a contract that teachers sit together and make. It also involves students the students must participate. The reason being students' participation is when they make the rule, they intend to follow them up. Which is what happens when every school gives class an authority to make a rule. For example, even as small as a pre-primary classroom, you make a rule where you sit only in your own chair. So now the children are not able to read, they're just, the sight word is just introduced in the classes. So what you do is you make a photograph, or you take a photograph, or you stick a photograph of a chair and then you write your chair. And every day you come, you read that rules. Sometimes Sam will read, sometimes Harris will read, sometimes Fatima will read, and what happens is every child will look at the sight word and the chair as a symbol. My chair, I sit. I take care of it. Number 2 could be no eating in the class. So you put a small sandwich photograph and you write don't eat. I would rather prefer not to use the word no often in my school premise. So this is what happens when you make a social contract. It always gradually evolves with the students becoming bigger, understanding capacity increases, and every class, even until your 10th and 12th graders, have a rule chart. This becomes very important because students are more keen to follow the discipline rules that they make. This is an example of a rule which a class would have made. It says discipline rules be on time, and you see there is a watch out there. I would always prefer a pictorial symbol which is a memory peg for the student. No fighting, so there is a fist fight. Of course, this is more like the black salute, of course, but we are looking at no fighting. No colored hair, depends on a school. I know a fantastic school which is okay with students coloring the hair. And if you follow the cricket or the sporting scenario across, the heroes that they have, the role models they have, they're coloring their hair every time. I think school need to look at its culture and say, all right, that's not such a big issue, I'll accept it. And I have no problem with that. In fact, I would encourage it. But some schools say, no, I don't want even a sniff of indiscipline, so I will have no colored hair. So no, Hardik Pandya does not get admission in your school. Accepted, but that's on the rule card. Students make the rule. You make a democratic forum, you have a debate, you discuss things before the rules are set up, and when everybody is convinced, or rather a majority of team is convinced, then the rules come in. No eating, no smoking, of course, as you look at. So this is how you make up a rule card or a discipline chart in your classrooms. Then, what happens when the violation happens? Now, the violation is not, I'm talking about student violation, the teacher violation. What happens then? So now, you put a graded level for the teachers as well. And this is very, very interesting. You have A, B and C. So you see, a teacher is constantly aware that not only am I talking the talk, I'm also walking the walk. So the first time a teacher violates, makes an indiscretion, makes a wrong call, she is reminded by the students. Wow. So let's say a teacher was late to the classroom, or teacher forgot to ask for the books to be bought in the classroom, and they say, why did you not bring the book? All right, it's a reminder you made a mistake. Then the next one is apology from the teacher. An apology could be in the form of chocolates, in the card. A smile is enough for an apology. Acknowledgement is more important than the apology. Remember what I said. Acknowledgement is more important than the apology. And the third one is, let's say she gives up 5, 10, 15 minutes of class period because she made a mistake. And I love that part. So what happens is, let's say, all right, I'm going to give 10 minutes of my class for a recess or a sports hour because I was the one who broke the rule. It could be a mobile ringing in the classroom. I don't know any of the rules. And then suddenly, a teacher, wears a floater in a classroom when it's all shoe policy. And then what happens? The students feel part of the decision making. They feel the rules are for everybody, and it's not always a class versus a mass kind of scenario. What else can you do to involve the parents in the rule? I do a lovely review of school almanac, the diary, and I say, why is there no quiz on rules, for example? And it's a very interesting phenomena. Or even a PTM. The principal can help the coordinators, or good smart teachers can prepare a small kind of a game or a quiz or even a questionnaire where you write the rules. A rule, for example, to discuss, is the school okay with hair coloring? Maybe your school is saying yes. So you say yes, no, maybe. And then there's a passing grade called 70%. Every parent who does not get 70 is now fined. A fine can be bring a brownie to the school, or give your 2 hours to the school as a social hour. And what happens is, when you do that, all of you are starting to follow the rules. You're learning the algebraic formulas, you're understanding, and there is a wholesome goodness about the rules. I know a very, very good school which says the school will become very rich because of the fine it is imposing every time somebody breaks the rule. So it's a fine school. No, we don't want to become a sarcastic remark like that also hurts the school. So please don't do that. Money is not the only deterrent. In fact, money sometimes becomes a very negative perspective. For example, I know a school which was doing this policy of anybody who comes in late, you have to pay a fine. Let's say, $2, $5, you put it in a box. Over the period of time, what happened is, some parent got very comfortable with the economics. They have businessmen and entrepreneurs. All right, so it's $2 a day. I'm going to spend $50 a month. I'm okay with that time because anyway I get my leverage, and it's not going to every day. I don't want that to happen. I don't want that culture to happen. Rather, a great culture would be, you spend 15 minutes late, you expect it to stay back 15 minutes. Now, it's a rule. So I'm not going to fine you, but because you came 10 minutes late to the school, I will admit the child, because the child has no fault in this. It's a parent or the guardian's fault. So I'll admit the child, but still you both lose 10 minutes of your time. So no reprimanding, no frowning faces. All you say, all right, sit down. There's a paperwork to be done, and the school has enough paperwork. Next time, parent feels guilty, embarrassed. Parent doesn't want to get 15 minutes of his time taken, and he will not take your 15 minutes. So we are up to our entire session on these taboo rules. and hopefully as a good teacher, I always say rules are meant not to be broken but rather to be implemented well. How do you do that? Your bag of trick, quick one is get on your knees. Yes, if your rules are really strict, you'll get on your knees to pray. But here I'm talking about not to beg and pray, but to look into the child square in the eye. For example, teachers tend to stand up when talking to students. But actually, the research says men tend to kneel down and get eye to an eye. This is strange research. Women are the one who talk a lot, and most of the teachers are female staff. So I'm not saying right and wrong. Please don't get me gender biased. But all I'm saying is getting down to the level changes it from a huge scary interaction to a direct conversation. When you're telling students about the rule or the rules they broke, look into the eye and tell them what happens. Now here is something I think all our mothers did as we grew up, called the broken record technique. What's a broken record technique? Keep saying. That's not the point. All you have to do is keep telling the rule, reiterating, reminding again. Somebody shouts in the class, no, I want you to raise your hand. Second time he shouts, somebody else shouts, I want you to raise the hand. Third time some other one shouts, I want you to raise your hand. Like a broken record, you keep playing, and very soon the verbal message is imprinted in a child's mind. I know this looks very strange, but this is your restraint in not doing the punishment but implementing the rule well. A lot of time rules fail to be followed because the implementation plan was very poor. People are great in making rules, people are great in punishing, but there is in between, the execution part is very poor. Alright, our last part of this session, and I hope it was a interesting session rather, and of course you can interact within your own community and with me on the emails. What kind of punishment should the child get? If the rules broken, and we spoke enough about rules and the levels, there are 3 levels of punishment. Number 1, the logical one. Number 2, the dignity one. And number 3, the alternative one. So what's the logical one? A logical one is when a child breaks a rule. There has to be a logical reason what should be done. It is not about you write, I will follow the rules, I will not talk in the class for 100 times. The problem was verbal. You are giving a solution which is written. It has no consequence. I'll give an example. A very nice example where there was someone who played with fire in the school, and there was a huge fire drill. Now this is unacceptable, right? It would go up high up there into the taboo rule, into T category. Now instead of reprimanding the child, the school made a brilliant input. What they said is, a child, of course we could have suspended the child, but instead of suspending the child has to spend 1 week at the fire victims in the hospital. So he used to nurture the fire victims. I can't think of a better way to make a child understand that you were playing with fire. Look at the consequence, the burns, the 2nd degrees and 3rd degrees, and this makes a difference. So that's what I'm talking about. Logical part is, let's say if somebody copies another's homework, which is not acceptable, so it will go to, I think first time offense would be NN, no rule. But what you do is you ask a child with a new set of homework to do all over again under supervision. That's a logical consequence. Number 2, preserve the dignity. I think these are scenes where you make a child sit, in these kind of, you make them a cock or a rooster, you make them stand outside the classroom, you make them kneel down. Of course, you're not doing anything good to their self-esteem, the morale. You are not preserving the dignity of the child. And this is very important. In a process, you're also lowering your own dignity. How many of us fondly remember the teachers who twisted? I mean, of course, that's a very saddest way of punishing a child. But the cane and the stick does not work. It may have worked when you grew up. It still works in a lot of rural areas and perhaps some urban areas. But I call it the age of illiteracy and ignorance. When you're still reprimanding a child that way, you mean to throw your authority on them like a dictator and not as a very effective guru and a teacher. So you must preserve the dignity. If you are a head or a coordinator or in a position of authority and this is happening in your school, take a stop to it. Please put your foot down and say, I will not accept anyone's dignity being humiliated in this way. So these corridors rules should not work. I remember we would stand in corridors and the only time we'll be afraid was when principal does the round. Otherwise it was a great time out, So we were outstanding students. So I don't want any outstanding students in this sense. Please don't do that. The final one is range of alternatives. What I mean by that is, like the teacher part, you give them a range. You tell them, look, since you did this mistake, you will be first A, given a reminder, B, a warning, C, you will sit late and submit, D, detention after school, E, meeting parents. So what happens is, when you give a range like that, every indiscipline a child is run through it, and it's a classroom, in a democratic setup in a classroom, when you're making framing rules, this is what will make really satisfied, happy teachers who can smile with all the beautiful white teeth, and they can say, fair enough, I have a great school culture, my discipline rules are brilliant, not only in the way they were implemented, the way they were followed, and I think our students knows what happens when there is an indiscipline issue. Thank you so much for listening to me. My name is Dawood Waheed. I'm the CEO at the Sky Education. You can email me at dawood@skyeducation.in. That's our website. And you can also tweet at the hashtag CEO Teacher. Have a great school culture. Till then, see you and bye-bye.